There is a place in the Nine Realms that even the gods fear to speak of, not because it is guarded by monsters, not because it lies in enemy territory, but because of what it offers. You see, the Norse understood something that most mythologies try to hide, that knowledge is not always power. Sometimes knowledge is a prison. Sometimes wisdom is the heaviest chain you can wear. And there is one place where this truth becomes absolute. One well, one source of knowledge so profound, so complete, so dangerous, that even Odin, the All-Father, the seeker of secrets, the god who sacrificed his own eye for wisdom, even he hesitated before drinking from it. They say no one should drink this water. They say it was meant to remain untouched, that the gods themselves placed warnings around it, not in runes but in silence. The kind of silence that makes your bones ache. The kind of silence that feels like a presence watching you, judging you, asking, "Are you certain you want to know?" Because once you drink, once you see what this well shows, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to who you were before. The you that existed in blessed ignorance, that version dies. And what emerges is something else entirely. If you have come this far, if you are listening to these words in the quiet hours, when the world sleeps and only the seekers remain awake, then perhaps you already understand. Perhaps you already know that some truths are worth the price, even if that price is everything you believe about yourself. This is the story of Mimir's well, the well of wisdom, the place where Odin traded his eye for sight. And this is the story of what really happened there. Not the sanitized version in the Eddas, not the tale the skalds sing around fires to entertain children, but the true story, the one that was buried because it revealed too much about the nature of consciousness itself, about what it means to know, about the terrible burden of understanding. Stay with me, traveler, because we are about to descend into the roots of the world tree, and not everyone who makes this journey returns the same. Before we can understand why Odin went to Mimir's well, before we can comprehend what he sacrificed, we need to understand what wisdom actually meant to the Norse, because it was not what we think of today. Today, we equate wisdom with knowledge. We think, the more you know, the wiser you are. We celebrate information. We worship data. We believe that understanding comes from accumulation, that if we just gather enough facts, enough experiences, enough insights, we will become wise. But the Norse understood something different, something darker. They understood that wisdom was not about knowing more. It was about seeing deeper, about perceiving the patterns beneath the surface of things, about understanding the invisible threads that connect cause to consequence, past to future, choice to fate. And most importantly, they understood that true wisdom was unbearable, that to see reality as it truly is, without the comforting illusions, without the stories we tell ourselves to make existence tolerable, was to invite a kind of madness, a holy madness, the madness of prophets and seers and kings who stare too long into the abyss. This is why the Vulvas, the wise women who practiced Seder, the magic of seeing, were both revered and feared. People came to them for prophecies, for visions of the future, for answers to questions that plagued them. But they also whispered about them in the dark, called them uncanny, avoided their gaze, because the Vulvas had drunk from the well of sight, and it had changed them, made them other, neither fully mortal nor fully divine, just aware, painfully, terribly aware of things that should remain hidden. Odin knew this. He had studied with the Vulvas, had learned their magic, something considered shameful for a male god, something feminine and transgressive. But Odin didn't care about shame. He cared about power. And he understood that true power came not from strength of arms, but from strength of vision, from the ability to see what others could not, to know what others feared to know, to understand the machinery of fate itself. And so he sought out the sources of wisdom scattered throughout the 9 realms. He learned the songs of the elves in Alfheim. He bargained with the dwarves in Svartalfheim for secrets of creation. He walked among mortals in Midgard, disguised as a wanderer, listening to their stories, their fears, their hopes. He even ventured into Jotunheim, the realm of the giants, to learn the old magic, the magic that existed before the gods, before language, before thought itself. But no matter how much he learned, no matter how many secrets he uncovered, there was always a sense of incompleteness, a gnawing feeling that he was missing something fundamental, something that tied all the other knowledge together, like having pieces of a vast puzzle scattered before you, but the central piece, the one that makes sense of all the others, remains hidden. And then he heard about Mimir. Mimir was old, not old in the way gods measure age, not a matter of centuries or even millennia. Mimir was old in a way that predated time itself. He existed before the Aesir rose to power, before Odin and his brothers killed Ymir, the first giant, and created the world from his corpse, before the sun and moon were set in the sky, before the first human drew breath. Some say Mimir was one of the first beings to emerge from Ginnungagap, the primordial void where fire and ice first met. Others say he was something even older, a consciousness that existed in the void before creation, that watched as reality took shape, that remembered what it was like when there was nothing. And that memory, that terrible, vast memory of nothingness, was the source of his wisdom. Mimir did not learn. He remembered. He remembered every moment that had ever occurred, every choice ever made, every word ever spoken, every thought ever conceived. His mind was a vast library containing the entire history of existence. And he sat beside his well, Mimisbrunner, at the roots of Yggdrasil, drinking from its waters, which preserved and enhanced his already incomprehensible memory. The well itself was fed by one of the roots of the world tree, the root that touched the realm of the gods. And as Yggdrasil absorbed the experiences of all 9 realms, the joys, the sorrows, the births, the deaths, the triumphs, the failures, those experiences flowed down through its roots and collected in Mimir's well. So that the water was not just water, it was concentrated existence. Every drop contained lifetimes, civilizations, entire epochs compressed into liquid form. To drink from that well was to drink memory itself, to absorb not just knowledge, but understanding, to see not just facts, but the connections between them, the patterns, the meanings, the invisible architecture of reality. But there was a price. There was always a price, because the human mind, and even the divine mind, is not meant to hold infinity. We are finite beings. We experience time linearly. We live in the present, remember the past, anticipate the future. Our consciousness is limited by design, because unlimited consciousness is another word for dissolution. If you could perceive everything at once, if you could hold in your mind every moment of history, every possibility, every perspective, what would be left of you? What would remain of your individual identity, your sense of self, your ability to make choices based on your unique perspective? You would cease to be a person and become merely a vessel for infinite information, a database, an archive, but not a being, not anymore. Mimir understood this. He had paid that price long ago. He was no longer truly Mimir. He was the memory of Mimir, the echo of what he once was, now so filled with the memories of everything else that his original self had been diluted almost to nothing. He existed. He was aware. But was he alive? Or was he simply remembering being alive? Even he could no longer say for certain. And yet, despite this, or perhaps because of this, beings sought him out. Gods and giants alike. Those desperate enough to trade everything for understanding, for answers to questions that plagued them, for sight beyond sight. And Mimir sat beside his well, ancient and patient, and waited. Because he knew they would come. They always came. The seekers, the desperate, the ones who believed that if they just knew enough, they could escape their fate, and he would give them what they sought. For a price. Always. For a price. Stop for a moment. I want you to consider something. Really consider it. If you could know everything, if you could see the future with perfect clarity, If you could understand every mystery, solve every riddle, answer every question, would you? Think carefully before you answer, because knowledge has a weight, understanding has a cost. Some questions, once answered, change you forever. Some truths, once known, cannot be forgotten, and you will spend the rest of your life carrying them. So I'm asking you now, before we go deeper into this story, before we follow Odin to the well, before we witness what he saw and what he gave, are you certain you want to know? Are you prepared for the possibility that this story might change how you see the world, how you see yourself, how you understand the nature of wisdom and sacrifice, and the terrible burden of consciousness? If you're ready to descend with me into the depths of Mimir's domain, then leave a comment right now. Write, "I seek the well." Just those 4 words, and I will know you are ready. I will know you are one of those rare souls who would rather know and suffer than remain ignorant and comfortable. Do it now. I'll wait for you at the edge of the well. Because what comes next is not entertainment, it's initiation, and only those who choose it consciously can truly understand its meaning. When Odin finally decided to seek out Mimir's well, he did not announce it. He did not gather companions. He did not ask for counsel from Frigg, his wife, who could see the future but never spoke of what she saw. He simply left. In the middle of the night, when even the stars seemed to dim their light, he rose from his throne in Asgard. He wrapped himself in a dark cloak, not his usual wanderer's disguise, but something plainer, more anonymous. He did not take Gungnir, his spear. He did not call for Sleipnir, his 8-legged horse. He wanted no symbols of power, no markers of identity. Because where he was going, being the All-Father would not help him. It might even hinder him. Mimir did not care about titles, did not care about authority. He cared only about whether you were willing to pay. And Odin knew somehow that the price would be terrible. But he had come too far to turn back now. He walked to the edge of Asgard, to the place where the rainbow bridge, Bifrost, shimmered in the darkness. Heimdall stood there as he always did, the eternal watchman who could see 100 miles in any direction and hear the grass growing in Midgard. "Where do you go, Allfather?" Heimdall asked, his golden eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Somewhere I must go alone," Odin replied. Heimdall studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "The well of memory does not give without taking, my lord." Odin paused. "You know where I'm going?" "I see many things," Heimdall said. "I see you leave. I see you return. But the you that returns is not the same as the you that leaves." "Will I regret it?" Odin asked. Heimdall's expression was unreadable. No one who drinks from that well regrets it. Regret requires the ability to wish things were different, and those who drink lose that ability. They see why things are as they are, and seeing, they accept. "That sounds like peace," Odin said. "No," Heimdall said quietly. "It sounds like surrender." But Odin was already walking away, down from Asgard, down through the branches of Yggdrasil, down into the deeper roots where the light of the sun and moon never reached. The journey took 3 days, or perhaps it took 3 years, or perhaps it took only 3 heartbeats. Time moved strangely near the roots of the world tree. As Odin descended, he felt the weight of the realms above him, felt the accumulated history pressing down. Every battle ever fought, every song ever sung, every child ever born, every death ever mourned. All of it flowing through Yggdrasil's roots like sap, like blood, like memory made liquid. He passed through regions he had never seen before. Vast caverns where luminescent fungi grew in patterns that looked almost like writing. Underground rivers that flowed upward, defying gravity, singing as they moved. Forests of stone where trees had turned to crystal over unimaginable ages. And everywhere, silence. Not the absence of sound, but a deeper silence. The silence of places that existed before sound was invented, before the concept of noise and quiet had meaning. It was in this silence that Odin heard the voice, not with his ears, but in his mind, a voice like distant thunder, like the rumble of glaciers shifting, like the groan of the earth itself. "You come seeking answers, wanderer. Odin stopped walking. I come seeking wisdom, Mimir. They are not the same thing. I know. A pause. Then, come then. I sit beside my well. I have been expecting you. And Odin followed the voice deeper still, until finally he emerged into a cavern so vast that its ceiling was lost in darkness. In the center of the cavern was a pool of water, perfectly circular, perfectly still. And beside the pool sat a figure. Odin had imagined an ancient giant, or perhaps a withered old man, but Mimir looked normal. He appeared middle-aged, his face weathered but not old, his eyes clear. And yet, there was something about him that made Odin's divine instincts scream. Not evil, not dangerous, but alien. As if what Odin was seeing was just a translation, an approximation of something that couldn't be fully perceived. "Sit, Odin All-Father," Mimir said, his voice gentle. "You have traveled far." Odin sat beside the well. Up close, the water looked different. It was thicker, more viscous, and it seemed to have a depth that defied physics. It wasn't a container of water. It was a window. "You know why I've come," Odin said. "Yes," Mimir replied. "You seek what all seekers seek: understanding, control, the ability to shape fate rather than be shaped by it." "Can you give me that?" Mimir smiled sadly. "I can give you knowledge of fate, Odin. I can show you the patterns, the invisible threads that bind all things. But control?" He shook his head. "To understand fate is to understand that it is not a chain to be broken, but a river to be navigated. You cannot stop the river. You can only choose how you move through it." "Then show me the river," Odin said. "I want to see what you see." Mimir looked at him for a long, quiet moment. "Do you know what memory truly is, All-Father?" Odin frowned. "It is the past preserved." "No," Mimir said softly. "That is recollection. Memory is the substance of consciousness itself. Every thought, every feeling, every choice. You are not a being who has memories. You are memory, momentarily arranged in a pattern called Odin." He gestured to the well. "This water is pure memory, the memory of all things. To drink it is to absorb the lived experience of everything that has ever existed, every perspective, every moment." "And I would remember it all?" Odin asked, his voice a low whisper. "You would be it all," Mimir corrected. "For a moment the boundaries of yourself would dissolve. You would not be Odin remembering other lives. You would be those lives. The warrior dying on the battlefield, the mother giving birth, the tree growing for 1,000 years, all simultaneously, all at once. And then you would return to being Odin, but changed, because you would understand, on a level deeper than thought, what it means to be everything and nothing at the same time." Odin's heart hammered in his chest. "What is the price?" Mimir's expression became grave. "The price is proportional to what you seek. If you want to drink deeply, to see far, then you must give something of equal value, something that defines you. My strength? Strength can be rebuilt. My immortality? That is not truly yours to give." "Then what?" Mimir pointed to Odin's face. "Sight," he said. "You must give me one of your eyes. Because the irony of wisdom is this: to see everything, you must first blind yourself to the ordinary. You must sacrifice the ability to look at the world, to gain the ability to look through it." Odin touched his face, his eyes. To lose one would be to see the world flattened, to be vulnerable, to be marked forever as incomplete. But what was physical sight compared to the sight of understanding? What was one eye compared to seeing the patterns that governed all existence? "If I do this," Odin said slowly, "will I be able to prevent Ragnarök?" Mimir looked at him with something like pity. "No," he said. "You will understand why Ragnarök happens. You will see the path that leads there. You will know every choice, every consequence, but you will not be able to stop it." "Then what is the point?" "The point," Mimir said, is that understanding is the point. To seek is to be divine, to accept what cannot be changed while still choosing how to meet it. That is wisdom. Odin stood. He walked to the edge of the well and looked into its dark depths, seeing only the reflection of his own face, staring back at him with two eyes that would soon become one. He reached up, placed his fingers against his right eye, and without allowing himself a moment to reconsider, without letting fear take hold, he pulled. The pain was exquisite, complete, total, all-encompassing. Every nerve in his face screamed. His divine body, which had endured countless wounds, fought him. It resisted. Gods are not meant to mutilate themselves. To harm yourself is to harm your very essence. But Odin pushed through the pain, through the primal instinct screaming at him to stop, and finally, the eye came free. He held it in his palm, still warm, still seeing. For a bizarre moment, his perspective split. He was looking down at his palm from his remaining eye, and simultaneously looking up from the eye in his hand, seeing his own face from two angles at once. One with both eyes intact, the other with blood streaming from an empty socket. Then the connection severed, and the eye in his palm went dark. He held it for one more moment, this piece of himself, this organ that had seen the sun rise over Asgard and watched his children grow. Gone now. Sacrificed. He let it fall into the well. It plopped into the water and sank, disappearing into the depths, and the water began to glow. Softly at first, then brighter, as if the sacrifice had activated some dormant mechanism. Mimir stood. He dipped a simple wooden cup into the water, filled it, and handed it to Odin. "Drink," he said, "and remember everything." Odin took the cup, his hands shaking. Blood still dripped from his empty socket, the pain a throbbing, insistent rhythm, but he barely noticed. Because looking at the water in the cup, he could feel it, the vast ocean of consciousness it contained. All the lives, all the deaths, all the moments, compressed into this single cup, waiting to flood into him, to drown him, to remake him. He raised the cup to his lips and drank. Wait, before I tell you what Odin saw, before I describe what it feels like to have your consciousness expand to contain everything, I need to know that you understand what we're about to witness. Because this is the moment, the pivotal point where Odin ceased to be merely the leader of the Aesir and became something else, something stranger, something lonelier. What I'm about to describe is not pleasant. It's not a hero's triumph. It's loss, the loss of innocence, the loss of the comfortable delusion that we can understand reality without being changed by that understanding. So, if you're still with me, if you've journeyed this far into the roots of Yggdrasil, then write this in the comments. I drink from the well of memory. Those 6 words, say them consciously, because this is your threshold too. Once you hear what comes next, you'll see the gods not as powerful beings to admire, but as tragic beings, cursed with awareness, doomed by their own wisdom. Is that what you want? Do you want to see behind the veil? If yes, write it now. I drink from the well of memory, and I'll meet you on the other side, where Odin still stands, the cup empty, his remaining eye wide. As the memories begin, go ahead, I'll wait. Because this is not a story you should hear unless you've consciously chosen to. When the water touched Odin's tongue, when it entered his body, everything stopped. The cave disappeared. Mimir disappeared. His body disappeared. There was no more pain, no more sensation, because he disappeared. The being called Odin dissolved like salt in water, and what remained was memory, pure, undiluted, infinite. He remembered being born, not his birth, every birth. He was the first cell dividing in primordial seas. He was every mother in labor, feeling her body tear to bring forth new life, every infant gasping its first breath, every cry of hunger, of cold, of confusion. He felt it all, not as an observer, but as a participant. He was all of them, simultaneously. He remembered dying, every death. The warrior with a sword through his chest, feeling his strength drain away. The old woman in her bed, surrounded by family, feeling her heartbeat slow, and stop. The child with fever, confused and frightened. The tree struck by lightning, centuries of growth undone in an instant. The mountain worn down by rain, finally collapsing into dust, every ending. And he understood in that moment that death was not an enemy. It was simply part of the pattern, the exhale after the inhale, the silence after the song. He remembered just being. He was the stone that sat unchanged for eons, feeling the weight of time pass over it like water. Patient, enduring. He was the star burning in the void, feeling the nuclear fusion in its core, existing in perfect, terrible balance. He was the tree in the forest, feeling the sunlight on its leaves, the water in its roots, the quiet conversation with the trees around it, carried through the soil. A conversation without words, just, I am here, you are there, we are together. He remembered thinking, every thought ever conceived. The first hominid to look at the stars and wonder, what are those? The first philosopher to ask, why am I here? The mathematician discovering that 2 + 2 = 4 and feeling the universe click into place. The mystic touching enlightenment and realizing it was just another thought. Every moment of insight, every epiphany. And he understood that thought was not separate from the universe. It was just another pattern. Complexity aware of its own complexity. He remembered loving, every love ever felt. The parent holding their child for the first time, feeling a tenderness so strong it hurt. The lovers finding each other in the dark, trying desperately to merge into one. The old couple sitting in comfortable silence, having said everything they needed to say decades ago. The dog waiting by the door for a master who would never return, every form of love. And he understood that love was both the most beautiful and most tragic thing in existence. Beautiful because it was the universe trying to heal its own fragmentation. Tragic because it could never fully succeed. Because separation is fundamental. Because even in the deepest union, each being remained ultimately, finally, alone, he remembered knowing. And this was the strangest memory of all, because knowing wasn't a static thing. It was a process, a journey from ignorance to understanding, and he lived every moment of that journey for every being that ever existed. The confusion, the seeking, the grasping, the moment of clarity, and the new confusion that came after, because every answer revealed new questions. He saw that wisdom was not the end of the cycle. It was the acceptance of the cycle, the understanding that the journey is the destination. You never arrive at final knowledge, you just get better at traveling. And then, the memories began to organize themselves. The chaos began to form into patterns. He started to see the connections, how one life led to another, how choices rippled outward through time, how every action, no matter how small, changed everything that came after. He saw the invisible web that connected all beings. He saw that nothing existed in isolation, that every atom in his body had once been part of something else, a star, a planet, another being. He saw the flow of destiny. He saw Ragnarök, not as a possibility, but as a certainty. He saw his own death, the fangs of the wolf closing around him. He saw the death of Thor, of Freyr, of Heimdall. He saw the fall of Asgard, the fire, the flood. He saw it all, not as a vision of the future, but as a memory of something that had not yet happened, but was as real and as solid as anything that had. He saw the entire tapestry of existence, from the first moment to the last, spread out before him. And he saw his place in it. A single thread, woven into a pattern so vast, so complex, so beautiful, and so terrifying that no single mind could ever hope to comprehend it. And in that moment, Odin understood. He understood that his sacrifice was not to gain power. It was to gain the burden of knowledge. The terrible, lonely burden of seeing the end of all things and knowing he was powerless to stop it. That his only choice was how to face it. And that is what it means to be a god in Norse mythology. not to be all-powerful, but to be all-seeing. To be cursed with the foresight of your own doom, and to find the courage, every single day, to get up, to fight, to love, to build and to live, knowing full well that it will all turn to ash. And that, my friends, is a kind of courage that's truly divine. Thank you so much for watching, for taking this journey with me. If this story resonated with you, a like and a follow would mean the world. Until we meet again, stay curious. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into the heart of Norse mythology, but not in the way you might expect. We're going to explore a profound, almost cosmic perspective on Odin, the All-Father, and the apocalypse he famously feared, Ragnarök. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's journey into the mind of a god. Imagine, for a moment, that you are Odin. Not the king on his golden throne, but a consciousness realizing its own nature. You see yourself not as a permanent, singular being, but as a temporary arrangement of stardust, energy, and memory. You are just one way the universe looks at itself, one story among countless others. From this vantage point, you see the threads of fate. They aren't rigid chains, but a web of infinite probabilities. A dance of cause and effect so intricate it looks like destiny. And within this web, you see Ragnarök, not as a single catastrophic event, but as the natural end of a cycle that began eons ago. Think about it. The gods, the Aesir, rose to power through an act of immense violence, slaying the primordial giant, Ymir. They carved the 9 realms from his body, imposing their divine order on raw chaos. But that first act, that original sin, echoed through time. It planted the seeds of its own destruction. It was inevitable that the giants would seek revenge. It was inevitable that Loki's children, the monstrous wolf Fenrir, the world serpent Jormungandr, and Hel, the queen of the dead, would rise against their captors. The bound would break free, and the order the gods fought so hard to maintain would crumble back into the chaos from whence it came. This wasn't personal. It wasn't a punishment from some higher power. It was simply the way of the universe. Systems rise, they stabilize for a time, they decay, and eventually they fall. And from the rubble, they rise again in a new form. This is entropy, the universal tendency to move from order to disorder. And not even the All-Father, with all his wisdom and magic, could fight entropy forever. In this vision, Odin sees his own end. He sees Fenrir's immense jaws closing around him, feels the final darkness approaching. But there's no terror. There is only understanding. His death isn't a failure. It's a necessity. For a new world to be born, the old one must die. For new gods to rise, the old gods must fall. He realizes he isn't the hero of this grand saga. He is the sacrifice, the price that must be paid for transformation. And with that profound realization, something inside him shatters. Not his mind, but his attachment to being Odin, the king, the one who matters on a cosmic scale. He lets go of his ego, of his need to be important, and in that moment of complete surrender, of letting go, he becomes truly free. This perspective shifts Ragnarök from a simple tale of doom and gloom to a powerful story about cycles, sacrifice, and rebirth. It's a story that tells us that even in endings, there are new beginnings. It's not about the death of the gods, but about the universe endlessly reinventing itself. What do you think about this interpretation? Does it change how you see Odin and the Norse myths? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd love to read what you think. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive today. If you enjoyed this journey into mythology and philosophy, please give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Until next time, stay curious. When Odin finally came back to himself, when the infinite memories receded just enough for him to remember who he was, when he became Odin again, and not everything, he found himself on his knees. The cup had fallen from his hand, forgotten. Mimir was standing over him, one hand resting on his shoulder, a steady, grounding presence. "Breathe." Mimir's voice was soft, cutting through the cosmic noise still echoing in Odin's mind. "Return. You are Odin. You are here. You are now. Odin gasped, his chest heaving as if he'd been holding his breath for an eternity. He was crying. He hadn't even realized it. Not tears of pain or sorrow, but of sheer, crushing overwhelm. The feeling of having contained all of existence, only to be forced back into the narrow, suffocating confines of a single body, a single perspective. It felt like being squeezed from an endless ocean back into a single drop of water. How long? Odin managed to rasp, his voice hoarse. In the cave? A few moments, Mimir replied. In your experience, eternity. Odin looked up at the ancient being, his one remaining eye struggling to focus. The empty socket still ached, a dull phantom pain, but it was nothing compared to the psychic agony he had just endured. Physical pain was a distant, trivial thing now. I saw, he began, but the words died in his throat. How could he possibly describe it? How do you explain the experience of having been everything, of holding all of time, all perspectives, all lives within your consciousness? How do you convey that to someone who has only ever known oneself? I know, Mimir said, and there was a profound empathy in his voice. I have drunk from this well every day for longer than time has been measured, and every single day I struggle to remain myself, to not dissolve completely into the memories. That, Odin, is the true price of wisdom, not the knowing, but the remaining after you know. Odin's shoulders slumped. How do you bear it? He asked, the weight of infinity already pressing down on him. Mimir offered a sad, knowing smile. I remember why I chose to know in the first place. I remember that understanding, however painful, is always better than ignorance. And I find small things to anchor me, a face, a name, a purpose. Odin looked around the cave, his senses reeling. What is your purpose? To guard this well, Mimir stated simply. To ensure that only those who are willing to pay the price may drink. To witness, to remember, to be the memory, since memory itself has no form. Slowly, shakily, Odin got to his feet. His legs felt like they belonged to a stranger. Everything felt different. The cave looked the same, but he saw it in a new light. He could feel the immense age of the stones, the crushing weight of the mountain above them, the silent, invisible flow of water seeping through the earth. Everything was connected. Everything was alive in a way he had never perceived before. Even the air, even the silent stones, all of it was vibrating with existence, part of the same vast, intricate pattern. He felt lost, a stranger in his own skin. What do I do now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. You return to Asgard, Mimir said, his tone gentle but firm. You live, you rule, you make your choices. But now, you will make them knowing, seeing the consequences ripple out before they even unfold. Understanding the grand pattern even as you weave your own small thread into it. A cold dread seeped into Odin's heart. Will it change anything, my knowing? No, Mimir said, and the word was a hammer blow. And yes, the pattern will remain. Ragnarök will come. The end is written, but how you meet it, that is yours to decide. And that decision, as small as it may seem in the grand scope of eternity, that is where meaning lives, not in changing fate, but in choosing how you face it. And in that moment, Odin finally understood. He understood what Mimir had tried to tell him before he drank. Wisdom wasn't power over fate. It was the acceptance of it. It was the courage to act anyway. The will to choose meaning in the face of absolute meaninglessness. To create purpose in a universe that offered none. It was the ability to declare, this matters to me, even when you knew, on a cosmic scale, that nothing mattered at all. That was the terrible, beautiful paradox. You had to hold two opposing truths in your mind at the same time. Nothing matters. And everything matters. Both were true, and both had to be honored. Thank you, Odin said, the words feeling utterly inadequate. Mimir shook his head slowly. Do not thank me. You will curse me in the years to come, when the knowing becomes too heavy to bear, when you yearn for the sweet bliss of ignorance but find you can never return. When you watch those you love walk towards their doom, understanding exactly why, but are powerless to stop it, you will curse my name then. Perhaps, Odin conceded, a new resolve hardening in his eye. But I will also be grateful, because even accursed knowledge is better than a blessed ignorance. A flicker of deep respect crossed Mimir's ancient face. That, he said, is the mark of a true seeker. Go then, All-Father, go and bear your wisdom, and when the weight becomes too much to carry alone, you may return here, sit by my well, and we will remember together. Odin bowed his head, not as a king to a subject, but as a student to his teacher, as one who has received a terrible, magnificent gift and must now learn to carry it for the rest of his days. And then he turned and began the long climb back to the surface, back to Asgard, back to his throne, his responsibilities, and his inevitable doom. But he did not climb as the same being who had descended. He carried the weight of the cosmos in his mind and the courage to face it in his heart. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of mythology. If these stories resonate with you and you want to explore more of these deep philosophical themes, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It means the world to me. Until next time, stay curious. And now, traveler, we come to the question that matters, the question that makes this more than just a story. Why should you care about what happened to Odin in that cave? Why does it matter that a mythological god sacrificed his eye for wisdom? What does this ancient tale have to do with you, with your life, with the struggles you face? Everything. It has everything to do with you. Because what Odin experienced in that well, what he learned about the nature of knowing and being and choosing, that's the same journey every conscious being must take. We all, eventually, face the well of memory. Not literally, of course, but metaphorically. Every time you learn something that changes you, every time you gain understanding that you cannot unlearn, every time you see behind the curtain and realize the world is not what you thought it was, you are drinking from that well. Maybe it was the moment you realized your parents were flawed human beings, not the perfect protectors you believed them to be as a child. Maybe it was the first time you experienced real loss and understood, viscerally, that everyone you love will eventually die. Maybe it was when you achieved the goal you had been working toward for years and discovered it didn't make you happy the way you thought it would. Maybe it was when you learned something about history, about politics, about human nature that shattered your comfortable beliefs. Whatever it was, you drank from the well. You paid the price. You traded innocence for understanding, and you can never go back. That is the curse of wisdom. Not that it makes you suffer directly, but that it removes the comfortable illusions that made existence easier. And here's what Odin's story teaches us. That's okay. It's supposed to be that way. The point is not to remain ignorant. The point is not to avoid the well. The point is to drink from it, consciously, willingly, knowing the price, and then to carry that wisdom without letting it crush you, to see the pattern without becoming paralyzed by it, to understand fate without surrendering to it, to know that everything ends, and still choose to love, to build, to create, to matter. That's the paradox the Norse understood. That's why their gods were tragic figures. Because they knew, they saw the end coming, and they prepared for it anyway. Not because they believed they could win, but because the preparation itself was the point. The meaning was in the choosing, in the defiance, in saying, I know how this ends, and I will face it with courage anyway. You have that same choice. Every day. You know you will die someday. You know everything you build will eventually crumble. You know the people you love will leave, through death or distance or change. You know this. You've drunk from the well of memory. You cannot unlearn it. So what do? Do you despair? Do you give up? Do you decide nothing matters and stop trying? Or do you do what Odin did? Do you stand up, wipe the blood from your face and return to the world? Do you rule your kingdom, however small? Do you love your people, however flawed? Do you create your meaning, however temporary? Do you choose to matter, even knowing you don't? That is wisdom, not the knowing, but the choosing. not the sight, but the courage to look. If you have walked this path with me, if you descended to the well alongside Odin, if you felt the weight of infinite memory pressing against your consciousness, if you understood, even for a moment, what it means to know too much and choose to live anyway, then you are ready. Ready to see that the Norse myths are not entertainment. They are instruction manuals, guides for how to live in a universe that offers no inherent meaning, how to create purpose when none is given, how to face the darkness with your eyes open. In the comments, if this resonated with you, if you feel the call to continue this journey into the forgotten wisdom of the North, write these words: I heard the winds of the North. Let me know you were here. Let me know you drank from the well in your own way. Let me know you are one of us, one of the seekers, one of the first of the North. Because there are more stories to tell, more secrets to reveal, more wells to discover. The well of Urd, where the Norns weave fate. The well of Hvergelmir, where the dragon gnaws at the roots of reality. And others that have no names. Others that even the gods fear to speak of. If you stay with me, if you continue to descend into these depths, I promise you this: you will never see the world the same way again. You will understand the myths not as stories about gods and monsters, but as stories about consciousness itself, about the burden of awareness, about the courage it takes to exist fully in a universe that will forget you. Until the next tale, may Odin's sacrifice remind you that wisdom is earned, not given. May Mimir's patience teach you that understanding takes time. And may you, like the All-Father himself, choose to matter, choose to see, choose to live with eyes wide open, even when closing them would be easier. The well remains, the water still flows, and those who are brave enough may drink. Skål, travelers, until we meet again at the roots of the world tree.